I'm going to read straight from this book. Do you love to cook? Are you an adventurous eater? Are you a homesteader that wants to be more self-sufficient? Do you want to win a free cookbook? Well, of course you do. Hey, y'all, my name is Virginia Willis. I am a chef and cookbook author from Atlanta, Georgia, and welcome to Cookbooks with Virginia. I am so excited this week about my guest and the book. I have this week the Forager's Pantry with Ellen Zachos, and I am super excited. Let's just welcome her to the show.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Virginia.
Hi, Ellen. I am just so excited about this book, and I want to tell everybody how they can win a copy first.
Sure.
So, y'all, this is Ellen, and this is her beautiful book. And if you head to my Instagram feed, you will see the cover of this beautiful book. And you're going to follow me. If you don't follow me already, you're going to follow Ellen. And then you're going to enter to win a free copy of her beautiful baby. So, oh my gosh. So I know that people that have been following me on Instagram have seen my sort of foraging exploration, but you've written a dang gum book about it. That's awesome.
I have. It was really a labor of love. I wanted to write this book for so long, and I finally decided whether or not I could find somebody to buy it, I was going to start working on it, and I did, and then fortunately found somebody who was interested in publishing it.
It's really phenomenal. So y'all, I mean, I think that there has been once upon a time, right? People were more in touch with the land and the fact that you could go outdoors and you could pick something to eat. Mm-hmm. And I think that they still are very much more in touch with that in Europe, but somehow in the United States, we just sort of got lost.
We did. And I think it was because people felt like, if I have to go out and forage for my food, that means I'm poor, or it means I'm not as good as the people who can shop in a grocery store. Because I know that my grandmother, who was a Greek immigrant, foraged for her food, but my parents certainly didn't. You know, they went and bought canned goods and frozen.
It's that second generation. It's that, yeah. It's like we're not like that anymore. We're,
But I want to be like that. I want that knowledge. I think it's important, and I don't want it to be forgotten.
No, I think it's so important. And it's also, I think, as a cook and a chef, it's just so amazing because the flavors.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I think you speak to it about the blackberries, for example. You're completely right. Like growing up, we had wild blackberry brambles all at my grandparents' house, and we would pick the blackberries, and there were these tiny little blackberries, not very big. Oh my gosh, they had so much flavor. It actually makes me sad when I taste store-bought blackberries because they don't taste like anything.
No, and I don't buy them. I cannot buy those giant, big, inflated blueberries. I can't buy them. They have no flavor. The tiny ones that I pick are literally like an eighth of the size, but each one is a flavor explosion.
And it's so true. It's so true. So y'all, though, this book, what you've done, Ellen, is it's really this fascinating because you've created sort of like jumping off points. Because I think that you have people that are foragers that love to forage, but they may not love to cook, or they're not sure what to do with it. And then, so you've created these recipes to teach people what they can do with what they found in the wild.
Exactly. Because if you think about it, going out into the woods or the fields, or even if it's your own backyard and harvesting, that takes some work. It takes time and it takes effort. And wouldn't it be a pity if that went to waste and your wild harvest just sat in the refrigerator while you tried to say, what am I going to do with this stuff?
Right.
So this gives you master recipes that you can plug in. If you come home with dandelions instead of mustard greens, don't worry about it. Look in the greens chapter, and you can use any of those recipes with some adjustments. And that's what I am hoping to get people to understand, that they can use whatever they find and just tweak the recipes to accommodate those ingredients.
That's great. All right, let's talk about the safety part, because even me as a professional chef, as a professional cook, I've got my Southeastern guide to foraging. Like I've got all the books. We've of course got the Google and the internet and all the things. But I have to tell you, like every now and then I'm like, wow, is this that?
So do I sometimes, Virginia. Yeah. There are easy plants and there are difficult plants.
Yeah.
And there's still a couple plants that I'm working on. And especially since I moved to the Southwest recently, all of my go-to plants are back east. And
yes.
Exactly.
So you have a whole new world.
I am. And right? It's much
like foraging world.
And it's much more challenging out here because, we don't get a lot of rain, but there's some really interesting plants that grow out here. But back to your safety question, you have to be 100% sure of anything you harvest before you eat it. Now, maybe that's because you read everything you can get your hands on. Maybe it's because you take a foraging walk with an expert. Maybe it's because you go to these wild foods weekends. You have to be like a sponge and just soak it all up.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, if you're not sure, you just walk away.
Right. Leave it where it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I told you, y'all, we had a little pre-production call earlier in the week. And so when everyone started going crazy for sourdough, when the pandemic started, I started fermenting and foraging. Like I ramped up. I've foraged for years, but I really ramped it up. Right. So it was like looking. And I was in New England for about 5 years, and now I'm back in Georgia. So the plants that are up there are different from down here. And but I did do something last year, and I still don't know if it was pandemic anxiety or something I ate. But I developed a case of hives, and so it was like, wow, what was that?
Yeah.
And so I think, we do have to be careful. And I know, I don't want to dwell on this, but we have to be smart about it.
It's absolutely important. And there's a bunch of different things. First of all, you have to know what it is that you're harvesting. You have to be sure. Second of all, you have to think about where you're harvesting from.
Right.
Is it someplace that's clean, that's not sprayed with herbicides or not right next to a busy road?
Right.
And thirdly, you have to think about your own personal allergies. People have food allergies.
Right.
You might know you're allergic to strawberries, but you might not know if you were allergic to sassafras because, that's not a normal food for most people.
Right. So we do have a question. So it says, we have, my mom is watching, says mom is watching. So we've got one. I love finding mulberries in the neighborhood. Oh, I love mulberries.
I do too.
We have a question from Jessica. Is purslane covered in the book?
Purslane is covered in the book. And it's one of I think it is anyway. I could look it up now.
Here, I'll look it up. I'll give it a look and you answer the question.
Okay. Purslane is one of my favorites and it is so healthy. And the thing that kills me is that it is now being sold sometimes at farmers markets and at Whole Foods. It's not in the book. Okay.
It's not in the book. So you're going to talk about it. But it's easy. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's on my website, Jessica. So you can go there and find several different purslane recipes. And Virginia, you know this. Anybody who's written a book knows this. All the things that you want to include. There's not enough pages. You have to make cuts. I'm sorry, Jessica, but
no, it's all good. But there are tons of greens. There's nettle. There's tons. And last year I found a patch of wild mustard greens. Oh my gosh, they were so good. And I love all those bitter greens. And I just harvested a bunch of, but I didn't do the right thing, which is something that I think that you speak to. It's like, I should have eaten a little bit and made sure it was okay.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I did was I made this big old mess of greens because that's my nature. And I'm like chowing on it. And everything was okay. But look at this, like y'all, let me show some photographs. Look at those beautiful macaroons. So it's not just like it's not sticks and twigs.
No, it is definitely not sticks and twigs. I think that foraged food is as good as any food anywhere. When you think about it, it's not harvested before it's ripe. It's not shipped long distances. It's local, it's seasonal, it's organic, and the flavors are, that's the locust flower sorbet.
That's so beautiful. A dear friend of mine, Bill Smith, who was on a couple weeks ago, he makes a honeysuckle sorbet that is famous. Okay, let's talk about cattails because Hank Shaw forages a good bit.
Yes.
And I've had some cattail conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about cattails. Like, tell me which part, like tell me when is, I think that one of the things that I struggle with is the seasonality, because of course wild things have a good season.
Mm-hmm, they do. And it's the thing you have to take advantage of because, we can get asparagus from Argentina in the winter, but nobody's shipping cattails up here.
No.
For out of season consumption. So cattails are great because there's so many different edible parts. And I don't know what it's like in Georgia right now. In Santa Fe, we had more snow last night. So it's obviously not cattail season yet. But
oh my gosh.
I know. Yeah. So the first thing that comes into season, and it may already be past for you, is the young shoots of the cattails when they're just starting to come up.
Okay.
You can pull up a couple. And they call this Cossack asparagus. I don't know why. Maybe it was a traditional food in the Soviet Union, but you peel out a couple of outer layers, and the interior white part of those cattails is juicy and tender and has sort of a vaguely cucumber taste. You can slice that up and put it in your salad, or you could pickle it and use it in a cocktail. And that's just the first thing. The pollen of cattails is usable as a flour. My favorite thing, and a recipe that's in the book, are the male cattail flowers, which you just before they ripen, you scrape them off, and they have this wonderful sweet corn flavor to them. And I use them in a breakfast souffle. You can make a breakfast taco with it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to cook that. I'm so in love with this book, y'all. You got to get this book. If you like foraging, I would have to say this, and I'm not making this up, and I'm not just floating your skirt, Ellen. So there's fluffing your skirt. So there's all these books that tell you how to find it and where to find it, but then they don't tell you how to cook with it.
Right.
And you have done it. And I have to tell y'all, this is in my mind, and I've been reading and studying and buying all these books. This is the best cookbook for foraging that I've ever seen.
Oh, that means so much to me.
Kidding. I'm so excited to try some of these things.
Thank you.
I just love it. Japanese steamed buns. Like, who knew, right?
And that's made with mugwort, which is like a pernicious weed in most parts of the country. So that's something that just about everybody can find. And you were saying earlier how our generation doesn't seem to be as in touch with these flavors. Right. In Japan, that's a very popular flavor. It's used all over the place in mochi, in ice cream, in noodles.
Oh.
So a lot of times you can look to other cultures and see what they're using for plants and say, wow, that grows here too. Why don't I try it?
That's amazing. I know. I always loved it. I don't know if they still do, but when I was living and working in France, you could take your mushrooms to the pharmacy. So can you imagine taking your mushrooms to the CVS and the pharmacy being like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, not.
No, but
right?
I think
it's still part of the culture.
I love that. And I think you can do that in Sweden too, but I cannot. I mean, I'm thinking if I walked into my local CVS here, they'd say, get out of here, crazy lady. Take your poisonous mushrooms with you.
That she signed up for the newsletter.
Oh, thank you.
My mother has commented, which makes me laugh. Oh no, Virginia will want to stay outside even more.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Mama. Next time we go fishing, we're going to harvest some cattails and make some cattail flour. So you have a seasonality chart.
Yes. And I've tried to make it general enough that people can put their own regions in there because, for me, when I used to live in New York City, magnolias would maybe come out at the end of April, beginning of May. Now, I'm sure it's much earlier for you.
Yeah.
So what I want people to think about is not the calendar, but when is your spring? When is your summer? And that will help you figure out when to harvest.
I pickled some magnolia blossoms last year.
Did you like them?
A friend who's a chef now, he was in North Carolina, but he's now in the Pacific Northwest. He taught it to me and he used it. He had a restaurant in North Carolina where everything was from North Carolina. And he used it sort of like sushi ginger.
Yes, I've heard that. And I've pickled them too. I will tell you, Virginia, infused in bourbon, they are quite delicious because, they have that that sort of warm, spicy, clovey flavor to them. And you could just imagine.
Okay, I'm sold. I don't know that I need anything else to make me like bourbon more, but
I know.
That's hilarious. I'm sure I'm going to get a comment from my mother on that one. I love you, Mama. All right. So yes, Tara, it's awesome. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So y'all make sure that you go to my Instagram page and you're going to sign up to win a free copy. And if you don't win a free copy, you need to get this book anyway, because it's such a great book. So tell me about the curried green fritters. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's just, your recipes are exciting. It's not just like using a salad. Using a salad. I mean,
for me, food is, well, and you probably feel the same way. You're a professional chef. Food is something that I just get so excited about, and the flavors have to be wonderful. And if they're not, then I'm not interested. So I really tried to bring a bunch of different kinds of flavors into this book from different parts of the world. And I'm a big curry fan, let's face it. And this recipe, it also uses the coconut cream, which adds a nice sort of richness and sweetness to it.
Oh, but y'all look, she's got a pavlova and this is clafouti. She's got a clafouti and a pavlova and fruit curd. It's just, I'm so in love with it. It's just beautiful. The photographs are beautiful. All right, let's talk about, let's talk about acorns. Cause I feel like that's sort of like everyone knows how to identify an acorn, right?
Yes.
Like
it's very easy.
No
not scary.
Question. It is what it is. We all know what an acorn looks like. You're not going to worry that there's like some sort of deadly acorn that you don't know about.
That's right. There is no deadly acorn.
Right. But, I mean, I think that's the part that, that's the part that scares everybody. You're going to get sick or die. And, it can be really problematic, I know, with mushrooms, but acorns are acorns. So let's talk a little bit about how you handle acorn processing.
Okay. So acorns are not poisonous. There are no poisonous acorns, but all acorns have tannins in them. And that's what gives them their sort of bitter and astringent flavor. So you have to leach those out of the acorns to make them palatable. You also have to leach them out to make them safe, because if you consume too many tannins, it affects how your intestine absorbs nutrition. And you don't want to mess with that. But there are some people who say, oh, I've eaten sweet acorns that required no leaching. And I say, that's wonderful. I don't know what universe that was in, because I have never experienced it. I would love it, but I haven't experienced it yet. Some are less bitter than others. And you have to rely on your own taste buds. You'll read that you boil them in changes of water until the water runs clear. You know what, honey? Sometimes the water never runs clear.
Well, there you go.
You got to keep tasting them. And when you get not a hint of bitterness, your acorns are done. But if you hot leach them, you can't use them as flour because it cooks the starch.
Right.
So there's also several methods for cold leaching, and then you can use those acorns as flour, which is really wonderful and brings a richness to the baked goods that you just don't find in wheat flour.
I am so excited. I've not done acorns yet. So you're giving me the impetus and the get up and go to go do it. So I'm going to definitely do that. Is there a season that one could harvest the acorns?
Yes, it's definitely a fall crop, and you'll find that some years you get masses of acorns and some years not so much. But be sure that you only pick them from the ground, and do not pick any that, oh gosh, now I can't remember, do not pick any that have little holes in them, because those are the exit holes from maggots. Now, some people say, oh, it's just additional protein, but you know what? I don't really want those.
I prefer my protein in another way.
I do too. So if you find a bunch on the ground with little exit holes on them, just leave them there. Leave them there.
That's great. So y'all make sure to go to my Instagram feed and check this out. All right. So we've got Jimmy Profits has got a big old question mark. Bourbon, like put Magnolia in bourbon. You have woken up some Southerners. I have to tell you that. They're like, Magnolia, how much more Southern could you get?
I know.
Bourbon.
Well, it's a delicious combination. I'm a huge bourbon fan, even though I'm a New Englander by birth. Okay. That's okay. I can join the bourbon club.
Yeah, that's right.
And I actually had to make up a bourbon cocktail because I did an event at Magnolia Plantation in Charleston about a year and a half ago. And I wanted to do something special for the event. So I did the Magnolia infused bourbon, and it was a big hit.
That's so amazing. So did you make something? We talked about you maybe having some sort of sippy something today. Will you share that with us?
I would be happy to. So this is not with bourbon.
Okay.
So this is my riff on, you've probably heard of sloe gin. It's made from this fruit called a sloe, which is a kind of plum relative that grows in England, and they don't really grow here. But what does grow here are beach plums, and they're very similar to sloes in that they're small, like this big, and they're thorny, and they're very, very astringent when they're not ripe, but then they develop a sweetness. So I infused some gin, and I'm going to hold this up. I'm hoping you can see the beautiful color. Can you see that color? This is from the plums.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, and that was in, I'm going to put together a cocktail.
Pretty.
Yeah. This was the plums infused. This is not in the book. This is extra special bonus.
Okay.
Just for people watching today. This infused for 3 months. And now you can see the color a little better. It's gorgeous.
Oh, that's so pretty.
But here's the thing, and this is something that you may laugh, but I love these natural flavors, and I always try and work with them. And I took a sip of this, and I thought, what am I going to put with this? What goes really well with it? And I tried homemade elderflower liqueur, and I tried a homemade mugwort and grapefruit soda. And then I said, okay, you know what's most delicious with this?
There you go.
Sometimes it's okay to eat or drink something that is not foraged, that is not homemade. And I think, frankly, that the beach plum gin and the Fresca is a superbly delicious combination. And yes, it's only, not even 10 in the morning here, but cheers to you all.
Salud. That's it. That's it. So I feel like you have a fair amount of science here but it's very user friendly, right? Like
Good.
it's I feel like it's just enough to give people like confidence. It's not speaking over their head. So it's just something that, have you taken classes? Is it your history, your life, or how did Ellen become the person to write the Forager's Pantry?
First of all, because I love to eat. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, what are we having for supper? We haven't even had breakfast, and I'm pulling stuff out of the freezer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you don't. But second of all, I love plants. And I worked for many years in New York City, designing, installing, and maintaining rooftop gardens. And one of the people that worked with me was a forager. And at lunch one day, she sort of pulled a leaf out of a backyard and suggested I stick it in my cheese sandwich. And I thought, oh my God, I've never tasted anything like this before. And it's right in front of me. And it was free. And I was hooked right away. So I started taking every class I could find. I read everything I could find. I started going to wild food events. And, like I said at the beginning, I just absorbed as much as I possibly could, because I wanted to know why certain things were good, why the flavors were strong, why something was safe or not safe. And so I really educated myself and was fortunate enough to have access to people who could teach me.
Right. That's it. Right. And it really is. And y'all, make sure, let me put Ellen's website up, because it's just, I want to make sure that y'all go there. So for more information, we already have someone that said that they signed up for the newsletter. Go to backyardforager.com. There are classes that people can take. I know that a friend of mine has taken a mushroom foraging class, because we have quite a few. The chanterelles have been crazy in Georgia.
Lucky.
I don't know what happened, but they're like everywhere. And
don't ask why, Virginia. Just go harvest them.
I'm not asking why. In fact, a friend of mine, my friend Debbie, she told me that she had frozen so many last year that she hadn't eaten them all yet. And I was like, well, you need to eat them more because they're so delicious. But there are classes that you can take. And I know it's tricky with COVID, but they're on-site classes, because I think that that's the best. If you can go with an expert that's going to put that leaf in your hot little hand and say, this is this, this is X, this is what you can eat, and this is when you can harvest it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, I find it fascinating, and I think that people need to hear this, and they need to hear it from someone like you about respecting amounts.
Yeah. Everybody asks this, and I'm so glad they're asking this, because sustainability is a big issue. Now, a lot of the plants that are delicious just happen to also be invasive weeds, and that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you can harvest something like wild garlic or, some invasive mustards, you're not hurting that population of plants. You couldn't do it if you tried. Mugwort, Japanese knotweed, these are things that are, people will be happy for you to knock back the population. But there are other things like ramps and certain root crops that you don't want to dig up with abandon, because you really are hurting the population. So whenever you forage, you need to look around you. You need to say, is this a plentiful plant? Who else is depending on this? Are there insects? Can I take all these milkweed flowers? No, I don't think so. Maybe some of that nectar is required by a butterfly, by a bee. I'll just take a few. Take what you need. Do not be greedy. Leave some for insects, for animals, for other foragers. Leave some so the plant can propagate itself. It's hard, especially when it's something really delicious. You're excited. You're like, I want it all. Don't take it all.
Yeah, no, that's how we got in this mess. That's how we forgot our way, and how we are eating asparagus from Argentina in the wrong time of year. No, I think it was, I can't remember it exactly, but it was like there's a forager lady in Appalachia that talks about, like, I feel like it's 25%. Like, you can take 25%, you leave 25% for the insects, 25% for the future, and 25%, 25% for the animals, 25% for yourself, 25% for the future, and I guess 25% for like another forager to come along. Yeah. And I think that that's so important. I make a dandelion salve. I've been doing it, I guess, for the past couple of years, and I just love it. And it's a beautiful color, and I love the process because it's a couple weeks. And but dandelions, right? They're a weed. Yeah, you're not gonna decimate the dandelion population. Okay. And the other thing is, if you're just harvesting flowers or leaves, and you leave some of those leaves behind so the plant can continue to photosynthesize, that plant's going to be okay. But if you're picking up root crops, if you're digging up root crops, you're essentially killing the plant. So we were talking about cattails earlier. You don't want to dig up all the rhizomes of the cattails for flour or to eat them. You just want to take a small portion so that patch of cattails can continue to live and grow. That's so awesome. I mean, I think it's just so right. And I think it's also important what you said earlier, and we're going to bring it up again about harvesting where you're sure it's safe. Like, there's a blanket of dandelion blossoms right off of a busy road, but I don't want to rub that on my hands, right? So I'm in the park, and you talk about that a lot of parks you can harvest, but you need to tuck the rules in your back pocket so if a ranger comes along. You really do. And sometimes the rangers don't know. I mean, sometimes they're just doing their job and they're really trying, but they don't know all the rules. And so whenever I go out, if I'm in a state park or a national park, I read up on it in advance, and I actually print up a copy of the rules and take it with me, and then say very nicely to the ranger, well, the superintendent of your park says, and of course, then they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Yeah. Well, I know, and it's funny. I was recently in North Georgia, and I don't think it's season yet, but like here we have wild ginseng, and that's like a nationally, it's a protected, endangered species, and it's, of course, it's hundreds of dollars a pound, and it grows here. There's probably some growing right down the river, not too far from me right now. I don't want to harvest it, but I do want to see it in the wild. When I was reading up on it and trying to read about how to identify what it looks like above ground, there are restrictions, like, because it's an endangered species, and so there are restrictions and severe fines if you're caught with ginseng and you don't have a permit. So that actually requires a harvesting permit. And so other places, like if you were going to be harvesting mushrooms in Colorado, if you're doing it for your own self,
it's okay in some places, but in other places, it varies from county to county. You need to have a permit to harvest those things. So you really need to educate yourself on the rules for your locale.
Well, I can't think of a better way for people to start educating themselves by looking at your book. And I swear to God, I could just like talk to you for hours and hours and hours about this. I have not been so excited about a book in a long time. And I see a lot of cookbooks, ma'am. So
I bet you
just really applaud you for this beautiful book and all of this incredible knowledge. All right. And we're at the end. I can't even believe it. So I've got some questions for you. You ready? Okay. So what was the last cookbook you read or cooked from other than your own?
Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Great. I love her and would love to have dinner with her. And I enjoy her, not only her recipes, but the way she writes. Samin Nosrat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I love that.
Yeah, no, I get it. I feel that way too. No, that's one of the best books that's come out. And I think she's a cook's cook.
Yeah.
She's a cook's cook. And sometimes I think that people get I love writing recipes and I test my recipes and I'm sure you test your recipes like to the nth degree to make sure that they work. But at the same time, sometimes you have to let go of that ball and chain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, all right. What is your most indispensable cooking tool?
It's my Vitamix. I have 2 canisters for my Vitamix. I have the dry grains container, which I actually use more than the other one, because that's where I make my flours from dockseed, from acorns, from chestnuts, all in that dry grains container. It's a really great tool.
Oh, that's so awesome. This has been like the funnest question because no one has duplicated it. And no one's actually said knife yet either, but everyone I think assumes that, that's your desert, that's your have to.
Yeah.
The second one. So the Vitamix. Well, good for you. That's awesome. All right. Sour, salty, bitter, sweet, or savory. Which is your favorite flavor?
It's sweet. I can't help it. I am a dessert person. I would have dessert at breakfast if I could, but nobody would let me.
Well, you're a grown-ass woman. You can do what you want, right? I mean, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Jimmy says, Carrie Botman says that the drink looks refreshing. That's awesome. And are you kin to Elizabeth Zachos? Yes. Sister. So you're a grown-ass woman too, Elizabeth. You can have a cocktail in the morning if you feel like you need it.
That's right. She can.
There you go. And what Jimmy says his neighbor always made dandelion wine.
I love dandelion wine.
I have not made dandelion wine. I made elderflower liqueur one time.
Dandelion wine takes years to mature, but it's worth the wait.
Oh, yeah. So last week, here we go again. I'm getting off track. Last week, Dara talked about in her book, From the North Wind, which is another beautiful book, but in Russia, they make like a dandelion blossom sort of honey simple syrup. And she calls for 350 dandelion blossoms in her recipe. Not cups, 350 dandelion blossoms.
Yeah,
really love.
It's a lot.
All right, so this is kind of funny, and I didn't mean it to be complicated, but like if you're hanging out watching food TV, who's someone that you like to watch?
Well, I have 2 things. I'm a sucker for the Great British Baking Show. I really like that. And I also have to say, you know how there's that Make-A-Wish Foundation for people who are dying? I always have said to my husband, if I ever have a terminal disease, my dying wish is to be a judge on Iron Chef. I love that show. And I
don't want you to do that, but maybe you should try to do it anyway. That's awesome. The Iron Chef is fun. Remember the one a long time ago where he took the red pepper and like bit the red pepper?
I do not remember that one. I should find
it.
That
was like a million years ago. That literally was like 20 years ago when they used to show the Japanese version. All right. So this is a big question. What is one of your favorite food memories? I think that food, that's why we're here. That's why you and I are here. That's why you wrote this beautiful book. It's like food is so much part of our soul. So share a little bit for us.
I've thought about this one a lot, and it's a sad memory, and I didn't want to end on a sad note.
That's okay. Well, it's okay.
Yeah. My dad died on December 31st, 2014, and it was the first year ever that I did not go home for Christmas. And in my family, trifle was the traditional Christmas dessert. We always had it. And I was going to make it for New Year's Eve for my friends out here in New Mexico. So I called home right before New Year's, like on the 29th. And my dad answered the phone, and it was a joke in our family. He'd be like, "Hey, Elzo, here's your mom. You know, he didn't like to talk on the phone. But this day, he was there, my mom was there, and so was Elizabeth, who's watching now. And we had this very animated conversation about the trifle and what should it be in it, and should it be strawberry or raspberry jam? And my dad said raspberry, and Elizabeth said it should be seedless. And it was just this wonderful conversation about this dessert that we all loved. And I made it, and 2 days later, he died.
Aww.
But I always have this memory of this wonderful and very atypical conversation with my dad, who was as enthusiastic about food as anybody I know on the planet. So that's my favorite.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that really memory. And I don't know who's chopping onions in here, but no, but that's it, right? Mm-hmm. That's why food just brings us together, and it's just such a, you know, that's why we write books. That's why people are watching this show. I mean, you know, it's wonderful. Ellen, I am just thrilled to pieces to have had you on Cookbooks with Virginia today. And I just love your book, and I'm so grateful for your time. And thank you so much for joining me.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much, Virginia.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And y'all, thank you so much for watching once again. I just love this. I love this show. I love getting to talk to interesting people. I love seeing these books. I cannot tell you how much I like this book. Like, I cannot wait to cook from this book. And spring is right around the corner here in Georgia, and there's going to be tons of stuff. So join me next week, once again, Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got some more great books. If you have any questions about Ellen's book, please go to see her website, backyardforager.com. And for more about me and how to win, check out virginiawools.com. So thank you so much for watching, and bon appetit, y'all. Bye-bye now.